Hey guys, it's Mystical Storms here with a new fanfiction. This is called Breed by Awkwardly Social, and it's a 5-chapter fic with only 6,392 words. It's pretty short, so I'll probably be reading this in 2 parts, 3 chapters for this one, and 2 for the next one. I also just want to mention that there's a slight bring up of past self-harm, and there's also underage smoking as a coping mechanism. Anyway, without further notice, let's get started. This is Chapter 1. Izuku has always been the kind of person who dealt with problems first, then hid somewhere small and dark to panic about it later. There was no time for a small dark place between everything the League of Villain had done in life in general, between hero training and working to get One for All under control. Not for the first time in his life, Izuku snuck out to the roof of the dorm and did something that would disappoint a lot of people. The cold made bones broken too many times ache. And the wind kept pushing in his hair into his eyes. Fuck, ow. His fingertips singed between themselves as he tried to light the stick between his lips. How did he say to do it again when it was windy? He clicked the lighter, holding it for Izuku as his other arm wrapped around his small waist, pulling them closer. Breathe in when it starts to light, and that'll get it started. Izuku coughed when smoke burnt his throat, but the man didn't let him go. He had been expecting it, catching the cigarette before he could drop and taking his own pull. He blew the smoke to the sky before he turned them around slowly and gently, pressing Izuku's back to the wall and leaving them chest to chest. He waited for Izuku to get a grip on his breathing before he spoke. You gotta get used to it. Here, try this. Izuku's eyes were blurred with tears from coughing, but he let himself fall limp in the hand that guided his draw. A man's rough finger felt nice, so different from his mother's soft, writing, callous touch. Close your eyes, and you'll know when to breathe in. He let his eyes close, and when a mouth touched his own, he opened it and breathed. He diluted smoke passed between them, and a hand stroked his throat. Good job, little one. You'll be natural soon enough. That much more pleasant than cutting, right? Izuku mentally waved the memory away. He cupped his palm around the flame, breathing in and blowing out from the side of his mouth. He tucked the lighter back into his pocket and slumped a bit, feet bouncing gently on the edge of the building as he braced himself on his hands. He felt the nicotine in the back of his neck and a gentle hand kneading the stress out. He let himself lay back, knees pulling up so he laid completely on the roof and head cushioned on one arm. He understood now why All Might hated his true form, why he hated that he had to rely on others. Izuku felt weak when he relied on the drug, an ironic trait of feeling and guilt. Smoke to process feelings. Feel guilt for smoking, and feel more. He scoffed to himself, took another drag, and stared at the black sky, too polluted to see anything beautiful that night. He didn't really like this side of himself. The happy, shy, but smart Deku, who always had encouragement behind a smile, wasn't fake, but it wasn't all he was either. Sometimes he needed time to be quiet and sad, to be alone and acknowledge that little dark part of himself that said to hit a little harder, to go for the soft spot. Use everything to win and forget that it's all just training for now. That part that said if he was so quirkless, he'd probably be dead by now. That he really would be useless Deku. He let himself drift in a haze. Everyone in the dorm had to be asleep by now. He wouldn't really need to go to bed for another hour or so. I should probably file some kind of report with Nezu, considering I'm fairly sure you're neither 20 or allowed to smoke on school grounds as a student. Izuku launched himself on his feet, smoke still hanging from his lips as Aizawa sensei stared at him, arms crossed with apparent disapproval. Aizawa sensei, oh dear, I can't explain. Izuku raised an eyebrow before Aizawa waved him down. Don't make me regret this, but I won't report you for now. Despite your reckless habit, you probably have a decent reason for having started. Where you say Kaminari and tried doing it because you thought it was cool and you would already have detention and probation. Aizawa settled down next to him on the roof, gently pushing down on his shoulder as he sat so they were both sitting side by side. Izuku let a surprised look pass over his face as Aizawa pulled out his own cigarette, lighted it up with practiced ease. You smoke? Aizawa grimaced but nodded. I started when I was about your age. Hisashi, Prison Mike, hates it, but he understands why I did. I tried to limit it to a cigarette a week at most. The hero life is hard, and not everyone copes in healthy ways. This is actually one of the more healthy ones, ironically. They sat in silence for a short while before Izuku spoke up, pulling out a cigarette at his feet once it had burned to the filter. How did you get started? Aizawa chuckled before answering. Ida's brother, actually. Ingenium? He continued at Izuku's question look. He thought it was going to be cool, something about smoking from his mouth and his engines. Dumbass coughed so bad we thought he was going to die. Hisashi and Nomura refused to try, but I liked the way nicotine felt. Even if I hated the taste, never quit after that. He put out his own cigarette, only half smoked. How did you start, Midoriya? Izuku curled in on himself, speaking to the ground. He could never lie to Aizawa-sensei. Somebody, probably a bad somebody, caught me about to make a really dumb decision. They stopped me, told me about a more acceptable way to cope, and taught me how to smoke. Said a slow death was better than a quick, accidental one. You didn't know them? Izuku shook his head. Nope, but I think I was sad and lonely, and even though I knew I had friends, there's things I can never tell my friends, things I can never tell anyone, and will never be able to share for the rest of my life. And Nameless Face was just nice, I think. Aizawa nodded before a more serious look crossed his face. Be careful, Midoriya. Nameless Faces can have ulterior motives, and despite having a fist that destroyed buildings, you can't fix emotional problems with brute force alone. Izuku didn't say, unless you're Bakugo, but he certainly taught it. Aizawa stood up, holding out a hand for Izuku to pull himself up with. You should probably go to bed before someone besides me notice you're not where you should be. Izuku pulled himself up, hunching in a bit against the cold wind that ruffled his clothes. He didn't feel better like he usually did after smoking. It was a bit like his guilt was going to swallow his heart. He didn't like people seeing that part of him, but he had to guess if he was to pick a person, Aizawa-sensei would probably be the first choice. Oh, and Midoriya? Izuku turned around to see his teacher speaking with a gruff tone in his voice. Normally, I'd recommend you set up a counseling session, but I know you have a little more on your plate than others, even if you don't know what the exact details. If you ever need someone to talk to who understands, or just a hug, but not in front of the others, I'm here. Izuku pressed himself into his teacher before he had even opened his arms fully. Face tucked into his chest, and he determined to himself silently as a battle-worn palm clasped the back of his neck that yes, a hug and a good talk was probably what he needed. He let his hands grip the edge of his teacher's shirt when tears started to come. His teacher felt safe, and something in his brain translated that to unleash your tears and feelings onto their perfectly good shirt. I'm sorry, I'm not a little kid, I shouldn't be crying. His words were muffled in a dark shirt, but they were heard clear enough. Aizawa wrapped another arm around Izuku's shoulder when they started to shake, an embrace that felt so much more loving than one in the alley. It felt like a parent, accepting and not judging him in the least. Midoriya, hey, look at me. Izuku pushed his face into Aizawa's chest, sniffing a little more frequently. Izuku, even if you won't look at me, listen to me. You're just a kid, you're 15, and you're not just your class, but you especially have dealt with a lot more than a kid your age should have been. Aizawa gave him a small squeeze. You shouldn't feel ashamed, although you could probably work on the happy crying. Izuku let out a wet laugh, pulling back to wipe his eyes once the wave of feelings had calmed. His sleeves thoroughly soaked, he looked at his teacher as Aizawa Sensei's hand settled on his shoulder. Feel any better? Izuku nodded, sniffling. He did feel better, and though the soft smile of his teacher's face was unexpected, it calmed him. Let's get you inside then. Rising heroes need their sleep, especially those that can't seem to go a week without breaking a bone. An arm settled around Izuku's shoulder and guided him back into the building to his room door. Izuku was walking in a haze at that point, tired and fuzzy from the crying, but also so much lighter inside. He felt drunk on feelings. If that's what being drunk felt like. He'd never had alcohol before. That was a step over the line of how much he was willing to disappoint his mother. He didn't remember much about being put to bed other than a gentle push on his shoulder and a finger in his hair until things went dark and he slept better than he had in weeks. You won't talk to them, Hisashi. Shota let his head sink into the pillow as a light finger stroked his hair. They all think he's this always positive person, and tonight I caught him smoking on the roof of the dorm, looking like he wanted to throw himself off the building. He damn near cried himself to sleep into my shirt at that first instant of me mentioning that I cared. You're talking about the same Midoriya I'm thinking of? The most literal definition of plus ultra I've ever taught? The very same. Aizawa pushed his head under his husband's chin, going limp as his hands wrapped around his shoulder. He's got so much potential, but he isn't coping. He's hiding something, and I don't know what it is, but it has something to do with All Might, and it's eating him from the inside. Hisashi frowned, lips pressed to his forehead, and gently whispering to the skin there. You think he's going to do something irreversible? Suicide rates in heroes are pretty high compared to the average population. It's not usually a big issue with hero students, but with the years those kids have had, that's what I'm worried about. I looked into Midoriya's record after that day, and I saw how powerful his quirk was. He was quirkless up until he started attending UA. I doubt children were kind to the only quirkless kid in the school. If you already got history of poor coping mechanisms, they won't get better with no help. I know you want to help, but I think the most we can do is offer our support and let him come to us if he needs it. If we try to force ourselves in, he might push us away. Shota already beginning to drift off. He couldn't help but wish he could do more. To do something, to say he was there for them, but that he could make them, he would make them time. I think they should. Shota. I think they should know. Shota. Get some sleep. Chapter 2. Shota wakes up to his husband half perched on his chest. Shota, I think I have an idea. Hisashi hunches to whisper in his ear as if they, excluding the cat, aren't the only two people in the apartment. That actually would probably work. No homework this week, but don't waste it doing nothing. Izuku finished the last of his notes and packed his things like the rest of his classmates. Uraka waved to him, catching his attention, and he starts to stand to join her before his stomach sinks. Midoriya, see me after class. Yes, sir. He can't help but wonder if Aizawa-sensei decided to punish him after all. It made him more anxious when his teacher said nothing but, follow me, as he led him down the hall. They end up in a teacher's lounge, perched on a couch across one another and waiting. Aizawa-sensei sighed as he sat and rested his chin on his hand. I want to talk to you about your quirk. He doesn't give Izuku a chance to panic even more. I think I've done you a disservice as your teacher, and I'm sorry for that. What are you talking about? You're an amazing teacher. Izuku could feel his face turning red. He'd never cut his teacher off before. While he'd normally feel guilty, he shoved it down to make room for sincerity. Izuku looked at his feet, and the next words were quiet. You're one of the first teachers who actually ever cared. A hand came to rest on Izuku's shoulder, and a quick glance up revealed the look Izuku wasn't sure how to interpret. It was sad but determined at the same time, and more interesting that he had never seen on his teacher's face, if you didn't count angry. Midoriya, I've done you a disservice because I wasn't paying attention to your needs with your quirk. You don't need the same training as others. That caught Izuku's attention. What do you mean? I need to get stronger like everyone else. You need to get stronger, but your quirk, that's already too powerful. So powerful that it's breaking you to use it. You need to learn to control. The door of the lounge slammed open. Izuku jumped so bad his soul felt like it had been scared away. Imprisoned Might rushed through, plopping himself on the couch, practically half sitting on Aizawa-sensei. He seemed to have a silent conversation with Aizawa-sensei for a moment before turning his attention to Izuku. Hey, little listener, sorry I'm late. I had some important stuff to look at. Nimeri was showing you cat photos. Izuku almost laughed at how the voice hero's hair seemed to droop with the accusation. Aizawa-sensei nudged Present Mike from the other side of the couch and continued where they had left off. As I was saying, he cast a withering glance to Mike-sensei. You need to learn to control, so if you're willing, someone else who had a too powerful quirk and couldn't control it is willing to train you. Present Mike gives Izuku a small smile. What do you think? What do you say, kid? Do you want to train with me? Looking at his teacher in the eyes is usually mildly terrifying, but there's something like hope there when Izuku nods his head to Aizawa-sensei. President Mike stands up with drama suitable to his style. Alright, kiddies, I've got grown-up things to do, so I'm heading out, but come see me after our class tomorrow, Midoriya, and we can set up a day to train once a week. Izuku can't do anything but nod, dumbstruck, as his teacher seemed to almost skip out of the room. When the door closed, Aizawa-sensei makes his second request. Besides getting training to reduce the stress of your quirk, I'd like you to have some counseling session with Recovery Girl. But I'm okay. No. Izuku's mouth doesn't have the time to close before his teacher continues. You're not okay, Midoriya. And you're justified in not being okay, but I think you need counseling to handle whatever it is you're handling. He gets quieter, and it's the closest thing to sad Izuku has ever seen his teacher. You don't have to tell me what's going on, but I know it has something to do with All Might, and I know it's eating away at you. Eventually, there won't be anything left of you if you don't let others help carry your burden. That makes Izuku pause. Of all people in the world, he probably only really trusts three: his mom, All Might, and Aizawa Sensei. If One for All was his quirk now, wasn't it his secret to do and what he wanted with? It wasn't like Aizawa Sensei would blurt it out to the world. Maybe it really was time to share the burden. Would you... He takes a breath before he can get the words out. Would you mind if I told you the secret? He leans back, and his teacher mimics him, setting into a more comfortable position. It's a really long story. I've got time. And so Izuku begins. I never got a quirk when I was 4. And he tells him everything. Alright. Let's see what you can do. President Might had brought Izuku to one of the practice cities after class. According to him, their goal was to see how much power we're working with here. Do you want 100% or just what I can do without breaking my bones? That seems to make Izuku pause for a moment. I don't want Recovery Girl to kill me, so let's see what you can do. Let's see what you can control for now. Aim it at a building there. He points three-story building about 100 yards off. Izuku takes a moment to think. He can handle as much power in his arms as he can in his legs, but he'd be better aimed with his arms. President Mike said to use as much power as he could, though maybe he could try full cowl at 6 or 7% to help everything balance out. But he also had to consider if he can control it at that height. And kid, Izuku's thought came to a halt. Stop thinking about it so much. You're not being graded. Just power up with the whole body thing you do and take a whack at it. We're here to learn. You're allowed to fail. Full cowl pulses through Izuku's body, and the usual adrenaline that accompanied his heart racing. It's a large building, so he runs at it and takes a leap. Full cowl is at 7%, and he takes him to the second floor height. With almost no efforts, he swings his leg back and pushes 20% into his legs, and the instant his foot connects with the concrete, the world explodes into gray. His vision fills with dirt, and he manages to jump backwards out of the cloud of view, the destructions he had... out of the cloud to view the destruction he had caused. President Mike's jaw is hanging a little loose when Izuku shuffles up next to him. The side of the building was caved in, and the roof was crumbling on itself. How much power was that? Izuku winced as he went to shuffle into his aching chin. I got a little excited, so I jumped, and running was 7%, but the kick was 20 with my shoot style. How did I do? Mike's slack jaw expression morphed into a white smile. Really good, Midoriya. Would you be willing to try maybe, say, 25%? Izuku looked to his feet. I haven't really gotten control over 25 yet. Even 20 can break me if I use it too much. Just now was enough to bruise me pretty bad. Okay, you just sit down for a second then, and let this old-timer show you something. Izuku excitedly sat down, eager to see the hero in action. President Mike walks forward to what's left of the building and takes a wide stand away back from it. When I was your age, We hadn't developed my microphones yet, so my quirk was an emitter and would hurt my allies just as much as my enemies. For your safety, I'm not taking this thing off, but without it, it would only direct about 30% of my current power. He turned back the building and let out a whoop. The ground shook and some rocks fell, but nothing major happened. That was 30%, and my quirk scared me because not only did it make me deaf, he tapped his earphones on his head. These are actually modified hearing aids, so I can get calm messages, but I risked really hurting myself and my friends. I had to make peace with my quirk and overcome my fear to really gain control of it. He yelled again at the building, but this time it caved in on itself completely and the foundation of it cracked. Izuku had made followed through. Mike watched his handiwork before coming back over Izuku. That's the difference between a third of my power and all of it, and I had to own my quirk to make it that way. Prison Mike held out his hand for Izuku to pull himself up and walked him to a new, less destroyed building. I want you to try hitting the building with 25%, but stop if I tell you to. Izuku turned to the wall and powered up his legs, bracing himself for the pain to come. Stop. One for all fizzed out, and Izuku turned to his teacher with confusion. You're anticipating pain, and it's making you panic. Quirks are part of us, and just like our health, they react to our emotions. Sometimes that helps, but for you right now, it really isn't. Try this. Take some breaths with me and try to calm down. It's your quirk. You're going to have total control of it. No messy emotions in the way. Izuku tries to breathe slowly to copy some of those breathing exercises a recovery girl had given him with his first therapy visit. He's surprised to find out that it worked. He feels more in control and everything than he was for a while. Good. Now keep that calm when you use your quirk and take a swing at it. One for all didn't seem to push at his skin when he powered up this time. It just flowed beneath the surface, ready to be used when he wanted to use it. He waited until his teacher had backed up out of the danger range and swung his fist. The concrete cracked, spiderwebbing up the building and caving the side like it had done before, but his hand didn't break. I did it! Izuku rushed to his teacher. I did it. Nothing even hurts at 25%. Prison Mike patted his back softly. See, kid, we'll all have you changing the weather like All Might in no time. Toshinori-san, Shota called out to the old hero, pulling his attention from his prodigy's practice. Ah, Aizawa-kun, what can I do for you? He turned back to the practice, but shuffled to the side to make room for Shota on the bench. Midoriya told me what you gave him. That made All Might pass. He did now. What do you have to say about it? Do you think I made the wrong choice of a successor? Shota took a seat on the bench and behind the old hero. I think you made the best choice there was, but I don't think you're a teacher quite yet, and Midoriya has suffered for it. He's turned to coping habits that are going to get him killed. I caught him smoking in the middle of the night, and I'm fairly sure he has anxiety, depression, or some kind of combination of those two. All Might doesn't get the chance to speak before Shota continues, this time to a tinge of anger in his voice. It's our job to protect these students, Toshinori-san. That doesn't just mean their bodies, it means their minds and their hearts as well. I know. Toshinori-san's tone makes him seem much older than he is. I just don't know how. He turns to Shota to look him in the eyes. I lost my teacher long before I had finished my training with my quirk. Now I'm going to die and leave my successor's broken heart, mind, and body. Shota placed a gentle palm on All Might's shoulder. Let us help you then. If not for you, then for Midoriya. I've already convinced him to see Recovery Girl for counseling sessions, and he's training with Hisashi to learn to control his quirk, too powerful for him, but he needs you too. He starts to stand and leaving the training grounds, but Shota turns back to one more point. Midoriya loves you like a father, and I think you love him like a son. I think it's time you acknowledge that and stop distancing yourself because you think you're getting too close. As Aizawa walks away, a new streak of determination made its way through Toshinori's spine. He would try harder and give his successor what he hadn't, and a guiding hand. Nana had been taken too soon. I'll be there for you, my boy. I'll make this right. Chapter 3. Izuku is nervous. Not to say that he isn't always a little nervous all the time, but this is a different kind of nervous. All Might had texted him to meet him after school, and they're going to go do something. Izuku fiddled with his phone, backpack weighing heavy on his shoulders as he waited for his mentor to meet him by the front gate. He didn't know what they were doing, and the ideas flitting through his head were making his brain swirl. Training, a new person to meet, maybe some kind of assignment. Are you ready to go, my boy? Izuku shrieked in surprise, whirling around to see his mentor scratching the back of his head sheepishly. Sorry to startle you. Izuku shoved his phone in his pocket, hurrying down the steps to walk with his teacher. No, I'm okay. Let's go. They walked silently for a short while. Izuku couldn't help but glance up at his teacher periodically. It was unusual for them to walk in silence like this, but he didn't notice that All Might was watching him too, and with something like concern stretched across his features. The silence was grinding Izuku's anxiety, and he blurted out his questions as they made it a few blocks from the school. So, where are we going? More training? All Might snapped out of his thoughts, trailed and shook his head with a small shake. It's a surprise, but I promise it isn't far. Just a few more minutes. They walked again in silence until All Might stopped suddenly and a hand nudged Izuku through the door of a new ice cream place that had just opened last week. Ice cream? All Might smiled and nudged him again, this time towards the array of colors and flavors between the glass. I felt like perhaps it would be nice to treat with how far you've come, and also as something to do while we talk about something. He continues quickly, and Izuku guessed he had seen the panic flash over his face. Nothing bad, I promise. It doesn't settle Izuku's nerves much, but he feels himself relax after they order, and he's slowly scooping strawberry vanilla swirls into his mouth. All Might sits in the booth across from him with his own lemon-flavored treat. It left untouched as he rested his chin in his hands. It was brought to my attention that I was done wrong by you. Izuku chokes on a chunk of strawberry when he tries to speak, but swallows painfully before All Might can interrupt him. What are you talking about? You've been a great teacher. All Might shushes him. Let me explain. Izuku waits, but he can't help the slow crawl of red strings making connections in the background. I've been teaching you about your quirk the way I taught myself. There's a kid running outside and students pass by the shop, but something about All Might's tone makes everything but their shared space mute. I lost my mentor before I mastered his power, and I mostly had to teach myself, but it came to me naturally, and I had Gran Torino to learn on when the world became too much. Hadn't he? I made your journey so much harder than it has to be because I didn't give you the option to share your burden, and I think you've started to be crushed under its weight." The ice cream sank in his stomach, pulling at him as he locked his eyes to the table. The red strings had been pinned. "Aizawa sensei told you, didn't he?" He had told him. Told me what? All Might was a terrible liar. "He told you about that night on the roof." All Might took a breath. Izuku let his gaze fall blank as it rose. He wasn't going to cry. He felt too empty for that. All Might coughed into his fist. No blood this time. "Yes, he told me. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to be disappointed. You haven't, my boy." Izuku hid his face behind his hand in a poor attempt of covering up some tears. At the beginning of tears. Emptiness is too much all at once. Emptiness too much all at once was a terrible feeling. "Aren't you upset?" Looking back, Izuku couldn't have heard his teacher's heart break more than it had the room to in the quiet of that little ice cream shop. Instead, he flinched when long fingers and a too large palm settled on his head. "Izuku, look at me, please." Izuku shook his head. If he tried to look up, he was going to cry even more. "Please." He took a deep breath and let his hand down, forced himself to look up. All Might's face was too kind. "I would never be mad at you for falling to stress of the weight I placed you on. I could only ever be disappointed if you used your gift to bring harm to others for evil. All Might's hands ruffled his hair before he returns to his own lap. "I just want you to talk to me, to know that I'm here for you to lean on and..." A pause. Izuku leaned forward, waiting for the finished thought. His ice cream had melted to a poorly mixed pink. All Might's face took a similar shade. "I see you as something of a... I'm sorry if I overstepped my bounds here, but you're becoming something of a son to me, and I've watched you grow in power and as a person over these times." Izuku stirred his ice cream. A small smile eclipsing the guilt in his chest. Had it been months ago, maybe even a year now, that he counted the times, Izuku would have blushed, sputtering en masse. No, he was tired. God, he was tired and sad, and something so lonely even when he was with the others. "Thank you." Something had settled between them. A new era to the relationship of predecessor and successor. All Might glanced out the window. It was still light, but the sun was setting. "Would you mind if I walked you home, my boy? You're staying the night at your mom's instead of the dorms tonight, correct?" Izuku nodded and stood up, collecting his empty cup. He wondered for a moment how All Might had finished his as he dropped them in the can by the door. Holding it open as they stepped outside, Izuku didn't feel much like talking as they walked, but he wanted to get his message across. He wanted to tell All Might that he wasn't just a teacher to him as well, and that he was grateful for his support and he would be okay. He couldn't get the words out, but he could pinch the loose fabric at the edge of his teacher's shirt and tug for his attention. All Might stopped walking and turned to the small hand clenched by his waist. "What is it?" Izuku opened his mouth and nothing would come out. All Might waited patiently, but a small oof led him when Izuku hugged him gently around a too thin waist, head tucked into his shoulder, and when an arm wrapped around his shoulder and a hand at his neck, the words weren't so hard to say. "It's like that for me too." He felt All Might's head turn towards him, but he didn't look. "Like what, my boy?" "You're more than just a teacher to me, All Might. You're kind of like a dad. At least that's what I think a dad should be." "I'm glad." All Might pulled back and gently separated them with his hands. On Izuku's shoulder. Although I think I might prefer if you call me Toshinori instead of All Might. All Might chuckled to himself, but it would make our meetings in public a little easier. Okay, Toshinori-san. The name felt strange, but Izuku felt like he would grow used to it. Hey, I'm really sorry that I told Aizawa Sensei about One for All, though. I know it's supposed to be a secret to be kept to help keep us safe, and I don't mind. Izuku, rambling, stopped short. You don't? It's your work now, not mine. And it isn't as though you've been telling everyone who will listen. I think it was probably be better in the long run for you to share with Aizawa Sensei. He can help you in things I may not be able to. Oh. They continued walking. By the time they talked softly of things that didn't matter until they reached Izuku's house. All right, my boy. I'll be seeing you tomorrow. Izuku nods, but called when something came to mind before All Might could get too far down the path. Wait! He rushed down to All Might, scrambling to pull something from his backpack. I think it's time for me to quit. I want you to take these. He dropped his cigarettes into All Might's hand. All Might, no. Toshinori-san puts them in his own back pocket, and he ruffles Izuku's hair. I'll help in any way I can. Until next time, Izuku. Until next time, Toshinori-san. Something changed in her little boy when he started UA. Inko knows this, and she chose to offer her support silently because this was Izuku's dream, and she wasn't going to hold him back. That was what she taught for the first couple months. Those first couple months of broken bones and silent tears. At some point, though, she knew Izuku picked up smoking. She wasn't sure when it started, but a mother always knows, and she herself had partaken for a long time to deal with the stress of being a young adult in a new world. Then she and Hisashi decided to have Izuku, and she quit cold turkey. She never started again, too afraid of how it could hurt her child. She had her first suspicion when she was cleaning out his school blazer, and the familiar ash smell filled her nose. It was poorly covered up with tin remains of dollar store body spray. She took the benefit of the doubt and told herself it must have just walked past some people smoking. Izuku hadn't talked to her for almost a week with anything more than yes, no, and a thank you. But she let it slide because she knew he was stressed out. She never smelled it on him again after that night. It would have been incredibly difficult once he'd moved to the dorms, but when he visits her, his fingers smell. He wraps his arms around her shoulder, and then a little parental twinge says, "Talk to him." She tries. She sits him down, tells him that she will always be there for him. You can tell me anything, Izuku. I won't be mad. I just want you to be safe and happy. Her heart sinks when something in his expression screams of still being alone after she speaks. I know, Mom. Thank you. I love you. I love you too, dear. The conversation ends. Today she watched him through the curtains, simultaneously trying to hide her face while also seeing as much interaction as she can. She watches intently as Izuku hands Yagi-kun a small box. How they share an interaction she wished Hisashi had stayed to give. She begins taking out pans for dinner, pulling them to her lazily with her quirk when Izuku starts back towards the door. She hears his keys and a soft call of "I'm home" as footsteps pads towards her. She flashes a small smile as she starts prepping the pork. "Hi, sweetie. How has school been?" "Good." His voice trailed back towards his room, and she heard the thud of his backpack on the floor. He came back with a skip and a step. "Anything I could do to help?" "Oh, Well, you. Well, if you'd like to help, you can help me make this. I'm sure you know what it is already. Together, they made dinner, talking about everything and anything. Izuku's hero training, what Inku heard from the neighborhood gossip, general stories about the up and coming heroes. Later into the night, as she watched her son, who's grown up, sleeping on a couch like he did as a child, she takes out her phone and sends a single text whispering to the phone, "Please protect him." His response almost coming instantaneously, as if he'd been as anxious as her. From Yagi-kun, "I will do my best." So, this is the end of chapter 3. I will be leaving the 2 other chapters for tomorrow because my throat hurts and I need to take a shower and I have to sign a few contracts and do some cleaning before I go to bed and get some rest for tomorrow. So, I will be updating the 2 chapters hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow or after tomorrow's morning, so Tuesday morning. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you next time. Bye.